Welcome to the Music Education Podcast. I'm Chris of the Chris Woods Groove Orchestra, and this podcast is brought to you by Charanga. Now, this is a really special episode. Is it the best episode of a music education podcast ever? It could be. It's the Music Ed Expo Special. Now, ahead of time, I booked in with 4 fascinating music educators to bring you some short but action-packed or information-packed or, better still, inspiration-packed conversations. I speak with Jim Frankel, Kit Massey, Sarah Marsh and Emily Crowhurst. And my first guest is Kit Massey, a professor at Trinity Laban.
The next station is Baker Street. Change for the Baker, Jubilee and Metropolitan.
I've got no idea what we should talk about.
Yeah.
We can talk about whatever you want. We can
Yeah.
talk about your talk.
Sure.
We can talk about other things.
Yeah.
You're at Trinity?
Trinity Laban, yeah. So I teach something called applied musicianship there.
Okay.
Both on the classical course and on the fairly new pop course. Well, it's called the pop course. It's like business and music production and industry course there. So that's to undergraduates. Which is really fun.
Nice. And today your talk was on theory by stealth.
So, yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Music theory by stealth.
I like that.
So I wrote a book for Hal Leonard. Actually, they came to Trinity. I think Trinity have got a good sort of reputation of being quite a creative music college who teach theory and musicianship in quite a creative way. So Hal Leonard came to Trinity and approached, have you got anyone that would write this book?
Yeah.
And it just so happened I was like in the room at the time. I was like, I'll do that. I could do that. And the idea of the book, I was like slightly terrified about how I was going to write this music theory book in this kind of grade 1 repertoire. But the way that I was taught at Trinity was that music theory is always in the service of making things, of like creating things, whether that's improvising or composing. And kind of, I felt like, I don't think anyone even used the term music theory. It was just these musicianship classes that I would have like on a Saturday morning that were like so fun and just full of like really incredible music making activity and listening. And, out of listening exercises, there'd be this little game that we'd play and that would like grow into a piece that we'd write and then notation would come from that. And so I always felt like it was a really fascinating way of learning the kind of building blocks of music, the language of music, by just making things. And it was so beautifully structured. And it kind of made me the sort of musician I am, I think. I'm like...
Is that just simply the music theory? Well, music theory is the explanation of music, isn't it?
Yeah.
So is it almost... I don't know, this probably isn't such a good sell, but it's almost like, don't teach music theory, just do music.
Yeah. Well, it's like,
That book wouldn't sell so well.
But that is essentially the book that I wrote. I even started this YouTube channel called No Such Thing as Music Theory because I wanted that to be sort of central to the kind of thinking of like music theory lives in the music that we make. It doesn't exist in this like separate world, in this separate class, in this separate workbook. I was kind of really interested in exploring that idea of using music theory as a set of tools. I sort of think it, if you think about the way that we teach, I think we know this intuitively about loads of education. Like you don't teach kids to write by looking at grammar tables, right? You teach kids to write by writing stories with a really fascinating creative stimulus, or reading, and then a writing task comes out of that. And then like the grammar comes in and the punctuation come in as a way of refining that expression. And each of those tools has kind of relevance and feels like, okay, I sort of understand why we're doing that. And similarly, you don't teach kids to draw by talking about perspective and colour wheels. Like that stuff comes out later, but you get messy. You sort of make things and get covered in paint, and then you start to refine it and start to kind of focus that energy. And I think that's the way that we should talk about music theory. I think a lot of that happens anyway in classrooms, and actually during that talk, like when I spoke to people afterwards, they were like, I do that. Oh, I do that. But it's kind of legitimizing it, and it's saying you are doing music theory. You know, music theory isn't just, like you said, it's like a language that we use to talk about music, right? But it doesn't have to be written down. It can be expressed through performance and through creation. Yeah.
So I think through lots of the conversations I had throughout the podcast, it's this idea that music theory has become such a separate subject, partly because of how we measure progress through the whole of education in the Western world, for sometimes very good reasons. And we have to sort of have a way of measuring it, and it's so hard to measure, you know, the lovely, fluffy, lovely musical stuff. Because it's totally subjective, isn't it? So the theory thing, that knowledge, that can be really tested, can't it? We can really tell, oh yeah, okay, you're doing all right, Jimmy, because you know all your modes now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, these are like concrete little building blocks that we can say are wrong or right. Yeah. I think some of the conservatism about this comes from students. Like I also teach like a harmony and counterpoint module at Trinity. And a lot of students love that because it reminds them of A-level. You know, it's like there's a wrong and a right answer.
Okay.
And they kind of love the kind of rigor and the structure of that.
Yeah.
But
a bit geeky.
But it's a bit geeky. And I love a bit of that as well. You know, it's like a musical puzzle that you can kind of put together.
It's not necessarily just a societal thing of that's, but you want it yourself, don't you? Because you're like, now I understand that. I've got the keys.
I've got the tools, and I've ticked this box, and I've got 60% in my test, and I've passed this. And it's a lot less subjective. But I think there's like big holes in our understanding of music theory because it tends to favour only the elements that can be tested. So in my talk, I was talking about like a lot of music theory is naming things.
Okay. But
naming things is only really useful if you've got like an emotional hook, like a kind of stimulus or a kind of association, like a sort of felt experience of a piece of music. So it's all very well to know that like a major seventh chord is like a major triad with a major third at the top, but it doesn't tell you really anything. It's like, what does that major seventh sound like, and how does it sound in different contexts in a key? And
otherwise, it's literally just a word. Or
it's just a word, and it's like, like a major seventh to me sounds quite smug, sounds quite pleased with itself.
Okay,
and I think we should use that kind of like poetic sort of language to describe music. And not be afraid of that. But I think that gets left out of the conversation because it's completely subjective. And to you, a major seventh chord might sound like purple, you know. And
so you can't measure it.
You can't measure it.
You can't measure that sort of level of depth to theory, I suppose.
Yeah. But I was talking about my brother, who's a chef, and we think that music theory exams are terrifying, but his chef exam was like really terrifying, where he got like blindfolded, and another chef would like feed him bits of herbs and spices.
Wow, and you have to say that's
sage. And you have to say that's sage, yeah.
Wow, that is tough.
That's tough. But I think we kind of need to have that similar understanding about sound, you know, that we need to develop this kind of descriptive repertoire about harmony and about notes and about melody and how it interacts. But it is very subjective.
Is there a problem in articulating that stuff? Because sometimes you mentioned colour, so you can't articulate, you know, the sound of that chord. It's because emotionally, our language is really limited for emotion, isn't it? Especially with the younger kids, we talk about, you know, angry, happy, sad, and it's so much more complex than that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. It was funny speaking to a friend of mine who's a primary school teacher, and she said, well, it's all very well you saying, you know, children need to be very good at describing music with descriptive vocabulary, but I spend a lot of time in English lessons realizing they don't actually have that descriptive vocabulary. So how do you form kind of understanding? And she was saying you should have like, loads of pictures. Just be like, play this chord. Like, which picture is that? Mm-hmm. What does it remind you of? And then that opens the conversation to kind of a more sort of descriptive language thing. Or like she was talking about a word box, have lots of different words, and which word best describes that sound, which word best describes that piece. So you're sort of enabling people to kind of develop this vocabulary around music. Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah,
that's really, really good. Because it's so limiting languages, but especially for kids.
Yeah,
especially but even as an adult.
Yeah,
that's why we use sort of colloquial terms and stuff, isn't it? Like talking about feeling it. Oh yeah, I wasn't really in the zone. I wasn't that. They're all really sort of huge words, aren't they? I don't quite. I'm struggling to articulate myself. Right.
Yeah, because it does defy a lot of stuff that we talk about in music, particularly groove. It definitely defies explanation, doesn't it? Really, and even it sort of defies kind of
technical analysis. You can say, well, what is the percentage of that swing on that D'Angelo album? You'll never really nail it down, will you? But you know it when you hear it.
I remember asking, when I started to learn guitar, and asking my friend to try and explain to me how I played the rhythm, how I played in time, because I didn't quite. I wanted someone to be able to articulate that thing to me that we take for granted. That just how I was kind of asking, how you work with a drummer, how do you dial into the rhythm of it, and it never. No one's ever explained it to me. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just something that
maybe it can't be explained, and maybe it's the understanding comes from feeling it and embodying it and playing. But again, I think that's where you sort of reach for analogy, isn't it? Rather than technical ways of explaining it.
Exciting. So in the book, how do you break it down? Or how do you communicate it?
Well, I am aware of the irony in basically giving a talk where I'm like, music theory doesn't live in a workbook. Buy my workbook. But I've tried to, as much as possible, make it creativity central to each chapter. So each chapter begins with a creative brief right from square one, because I think what really enables creativity is very clear limitations, sometimes very clear parameters, and really strong stimulus. So if you can give those two things in a creative exercise, when children or students or humans say, I'm not creative, or I don't really know what to do, it's usually because they don't really have clear signposts, they don't really have clear parameters around the task that they're doing. So I tried to make it we're going to do a chapter all about accidentals, about sharps and flats and semitones. But actually, Adagietta Maestro, who's this film director, has commissioned us to write this piece about monsters, some spooky music for this new film that she's writing. Cool. And this is the scene that we're writing the music for. Well, in order to do this, we've got our major scale, but we need to investigate some real crunches to get into our texture, to get into our musical piece, and so that we're going to have to learn about sharps and flats and semitones, so that these elements of music theory are kind of introduced as tools to sort of empower creation. So that's the kind of structure of it. Each chapter begins with a creative brief, then one or more music theory elements from the grade 1 syllabus are introduced with little exercises and games and word games and code name exercises where you write your name using special secret code, and as many as sort of imaginative ways that I could think. And then it ends with, you write the piece now. You write the piece. And that sort of talks to what we were talking about, testing. I think that sometimes in music education is a little bit neglected, because how do you mark that piece? maybe you could come up with a criteria about how you mark that piece up. But B, that piece is probably going to have loads of mistakes, and that's fine. That's a vehicle for correcting it and for celebrating the stuff that isn't good and refining the stuff that isn't. So I suppose it does kind of demand quite a lot from the teacher, perhaps, of being sort of present for that process. But I think it's really important to have those kind of slightly more open-ended creative exercises as part of a music theory syllabus. Yeah.
Brilliant, mate. That's perfect.
Is that, yeah?
Yeah. It's amazing. In this clip, I chat with Dr. Jim Frankel, President of Music First.
The thing that interests me most about the AI thing, and I wonder what you think about this, is the effect that AI will have on the way that we view the music that we teach. So, whereby AI is able to make amazing music because it is taking the elements of music that we teach, the fingerprints, these rhythms, these melodies, these scales. And it's as if, well, machines can actually kind of do that better, or they can do that quicker. They can take that. So what do you think about how that reflects on, well, maybe we need to change how we teach, maybe we need to double down on the human bit of music, not these mechanical fingerprints of, let's learn the fingerprints of Mozart, let's learn the fingerprints of Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And the first thing I thought of when I first heard Suno and Udio spit out music is that if you really think about composing and songwriting and all the music that we've grown up with and listened to, there are only so many notes. There's only so many harmonic progressions. There's only so many beats, right? And music as a form and a structure is not very hard to replicate. It's not hard, the 1/4, the 1/6/4/5 progression is in so many songs. And if you think about all of the artists that have listened to, I grew up listening to the Beatles, and then that inevitably had an impact on the type of music I wrote. I was a huge Pink Floyd fan, Led Zeppelin. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I loved that kind of music. And it definitely had an influence, not only the music that I loved as a consumer, but also the music that I wanted to create, because I loved it so much. And you look at the structure of those and you try to figure out why was a Beatles song so catchy. And you go, oh, well, this chord structure is actually used over and over. So the fact that AI was able to seemingly in a very short amount of time figure out that music is formulaic, right? That there's a formula to it. The songwriters, the craft of it, there's only so many chord patterns chord progressions that are going to sound good. There's only so many notes in a hook. It figured that out. Right, so that's what AI has done, is go, okay, we've listened to all of recorded music in history, and we found these patterns. So that when you put in a prompt, it does, it can spit it out relatively convincingly because it's so formulaic. However, the way we teach music, I think, is only enhanced by it. And just hear me out on this idea. And the human side of it, because I have not heard one AI track, and maybe one day, so I'll put that as the qualifier, that I've actually felt anything. Because if you think about why you like music or why a piece of music resonates with you, whether you cry over it, you get angry over it, you get sad, you get joyful, whatever emotions you get from listening to the music, in my opinion, it's usually from the singer's lived experience and reflecting into the lyrics that they're singing. And the lyrics reflect something that's happened to you. You make a connection. Taylor Swift sings a breakup song, and you reflect on the breakup that you had, and you go, oh my God, she nailed that feeling. I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan. I'm using it as an example that lyrics speak to people, and they evoke, if the reason I went into music is because I have a deep love of not only listening to music, but making music. So all that to say that I think that AI cannot replicate the lived experience of humans, the heartbreak. AI doesn't know what it feels like to have your heart broken. AI doesn't know what it feels like what rage really feels like. It just knows it from zeros and ones and is approximating what that might sound like musically. But when you're really angry, like Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill album, the ultimate breakup album, I listened to that over and over and over, and amazingly enough, I was engaged, and we broke up at an Alanis Morris concert. All right, but that lived human experience is, in my opinion, isn't anywhere near being replicable by AI. Right. So I just want to put that out there, that the human part of music, every AI track I've listened to, I yawn because it doesn't evoke that. And even if I didn't know that it was AI, I have found that it doesn't have that human aspect.
Can you sort of tangibly explain why that is, though?
To me, the lyrics are generic. They're vanilla. They're an approximation of what you want. Is, hey, write a song about heartbreak. It listens to every heartbreak song. But, when you hear Nina Simone sing a heartbreak song, the quality of her voice, that she's lived it and you feel the emotion. And when you hear it from AI, even if you didn't know it, for whatever reason, to me, not yet, it hasn't come through. All of that, back to your original question, is that we should still teach music, learning about what makes a melody great, how you get from one chord to another, why certain chord progressions work. We should keep doing that. Because there's only so many permutations of it. There's only really so many ways to teach it. I hope this all makes sense. Mm-hmm. But keeping the human part of that music is essential. And I think that music educators, what I said in my talk was, let AI do all the administrative stuff, or let it do tasks that you couldn't do otherwise. But in terms of the way we teach music, I wouldn't change a thing. I would just find tools that would make what I'm teaching potentially more engaging or easier if the AI tool can facilitate it.
But if that human element that you're saying is never replicated in AI, you're never hearing, what is that, and how can teachers turn that bit up in what they, or do we not know? Is the answer to that?
I think the best way to confront that is directly with students, playing a track is AI, that's a love song, heartbreak song, and playing a track that isn't a love, heartbreak song, and asking the kids, what do they think? Because kids, my understanding, and every video and article I've seen, kids can identify AI-generated music far quicker than we can. I'm in my mid-50s. I get fooled by it. For some reason, I've seen multiple videos and stories about this, that kids can pick it up. It's almost something in the sound of the music. They go, oh, that's AI. Rick Beato did an amazing episode with parents and kids, and the kids were able to decipher it immediately and the parents couldn't. That's what I'm basically talking about. And I think that if you made a lesson plan around, human versus AI, and spoke about it with kids candidly, and here's an AI track and here's a human track, and what do you hear? I am very confident that they'd repeat what I just said, whereas, Taylor Swift broke up with a boyfriend when she wrote this song, and you can hear her pain in the song, but the AI stuff is only trying to replicate. It's like you have a Rembrandt that was painted by Rembrandt, and then you have a paint by numbers version where you're going in and just filling in the color swatches. You look at the original Rembrandt and you feel it, and you look at the paint by numbers. Yeah.
But I just wonder, what education can do, and as a response to going, accepting AI, this is it. This is going to change music, and the way that people interact with music, like the idea of what's the Suno, the idea of fans being able to remix their favorite artists' music, all those things, and accepting that those things are there. But then, I'm fascinated by how music education should respond to that. I mean, do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And I personally, in the US, I was on the National Association for Music Education put together a task force on AI to give out guidance to music educators on what they should do with it. And I was on the assessment side of or either creativity or assessment side of guidelines for teachers of how they should. And if I were to boil all of that document, it was probably 30 pages.
This is quite recent.
Yep.
Wow,
Yep.
well, how exciting.
And if you want, I can send you a link so you can link to it in this episode. The guidance basically says that, look, if you're a choir director, it's up to you what you do with AI, right? What the kids are doing, if you think about traditional music education as a whole, what kids do at home with music has always been quite a separate thing than what they're doing in school, at least in the U.S. From our perspective. There's academic school music that the kids are doing, and then there's the music that they immediately put on their AirPods the second they get on the bus on the ride home, and they're listening to whoever they're listening to. So if you're a choir director teaching in a school right now, it's up to you whether you use AI or not. I don't think anyone's going to foist it on and say you must use AI. I personally think that there's some really great tools that can be great for teaching a piece of music that are powered by AI. But in terms of putting together a program for a concert, right? The teachers are not going to go, let's make up some music on AI and have them sing it. They're going to have a student compose. Hey, let's do it.
But is that okay?
Absolutely.
That's what I mean of saying you're the musicians of tomorrow. So let's play with AI.
Right. So excellent question. And here's I've spent now 37 years trying to convince music educators to use technology in their teaching. Up until COVID, that was a very hard thing to do, where there were, I would say, the 80% were never using it, or using it only as a tuner or a metronome, but very light touch technology usage, or a grade book that they had to use, or Google Classroom, but really as light as possible. COVID hits, everyone has to use technology because you couldn't perform together in person. So they focused on creativity, they focused ear training, music theory, history, they focused on everything except performance, right? And then as soon as everyone comes back to school, a great majority of those people that were forced to use it just to be able to do something musical with their kids went right back to the way they were doing it. And I don't think it's to the detriment of music education at all. And here I am, somebody who sells technology to music teachers. It was great to have this year and a half in the world's worst conditions to people check out our products. And people use them, and this is across the industry. Everybody, Zoom became a word, that we use as an adjective, or you want to Zoom. So I don't think if a teacher's reluctant or resistant to use AI in the classroom, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. There are ways for them to do it, again, light touch, where they can do an assignment that talks about the ethics of it, that talks about, I showed today in the session Sight Reading Factory, that's an AI. It's not really AI, it's machine learning, but it's an algorithm that spits out basically Bach voice leading chorales for choirs. That's a use of AI that doesn't feel like, the overlords, dark overlords are like scraping the internet. It's creating something for the kids to sing. That's a light touch AI integration, and I think that the kids will benefit from the usage of it. But there's no reason on earth for a choir director to say, I have to use Udio in my class. That's a silly, my point is that up till COVID, nobody was doing it anyway. They weren't using GarageBand in their choir, and then all of a sudden they were, and then they said, all right, we're going back to singing. That's fine with, whatever. My mission is to help teachers get their kids really loving music and engaged. And if some of our tools are useful, and just technology tools generically across all brands are useful, excellent. I just want more kids actively making music and loving music. And if technology isn't the answer, it's heretical, it's fine. You can have a really dynamic teacher who never pulls out any technology that can be just as effective, if not more so, as somebody who's got every single bell and whistle tech tool.
And is that because kids will inevitably just access the tech on their own anyway?
Yeah, so I think it's really all about the educator in the room. The success of a music program is the kids relationship with that director, with their wanting to make music with that. You can have a really terrible music teacher and your program's not going to be so great. And you can have a really amazing teacher with no resources at all, and you can have an incredible program. I really, my philosophy of technology and music education is as follows. It's make music the most important thing of all. Make really, really good teaching the second most important thing of all, and then get every tool you can to help achieve the third, which is to get kids to love music. And the reason I call my company Music First is that's my philosophy. It's all about teaching music. It's not about the technology. It should never be about the technology. And then the middle most critical factor is a really good, engaging, passionate, Pied Piper style music teacher, because we're one of those subjects where we're, in many cases, optional. And so we're always selling our topic to the kids. And, the reason that my kids loved coming to my classes is I was fun. They wanted to be around, but I was also a really focused and dedicated music teacher, but I tried to combine fun to make it so that they wanted to be there. And I think that technology is not a part of that equation. It's really... it should always be seen as a tool to help you do your job, and sometimes a baton or an old school metronome is just as effective as an AI tool or really any tool.
Beautiful.
Good. Cool.
Done. Thanks, man.
You got it.
In this clip, I chat with Sarah Marsh, Head of Curriculum for Brent Music Service.
So I think I maybe said on the phone, the best ones are the least prepared.
Yes, and I haven't prepared at all.
Well, that's fantastic. There's no advice. So
Excellent.
I've literally got no idea. We can talk about anything.
Let's see where it goes.
What's your talk on?
It's on creating a shared landscape of songs that a school own. That a feeling of a school having songs that everybody in the school knows.
Okay.
So a bit like in the old days in a church school, everyone would have a set of hymns and there'd be a school song and all that sort of thing. Just that idea of creating this sort of communal resource of songs and music across the school that everybody knows, and how that can build harmony and community, and how it can impact on learning.
Well, because they
and school life
in the playground.
Exactly.
They're all having that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what it's about.
That seems like what you immediately said. It's like an old idea. It's a thing that happened and then has gone, and then you're sort of having to re-inject it almost, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. When I grew up, I was born at the end of the 60s. We were talking about this and how young you are the other day. I was born at the end of the 60s. And my primary school time was all in the 1970s.
Right.
Okay. And my secondary school time was all in the first part of the 1980s.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I didn't go to church schools.
Right.
But we sang hymns every day.
Yeah.
And what's his name with the primary school bangers that are coming out? Is it James that's doing this thing called primary school bangers at the moment? And it's all over the internet. He gets people to Glastonbury and he fills tents full of people who are singing all those songs from the BBC hymn books, which we all sang in the 1970s and 80s.
Wow.
And everyone sang them, whether it was a secular school or a church school. Now, I'm not saying it's right to sing hymns in schools if it's not a church school. In fact, I don't think it is right. I think we need to find a different repertoire. But owning a set of songs that belongs to a school that reflects the values of the school and the sense that a school is a community, for assemblies, for just having those songs is really, really important. And I think we need to make sure that's still happening, even with secular repertoire and songs. So that's my point. But also, I would say, as a curriculum specialist for music, I think that if we have songs that we are teaching in the early years that are games that they're just singing for fun and playing a game with, if we can use those songs to demonstrate and understand about pitch or tonality or structure or rhythm as the children grow up, and use those songs the children already know to learn how to play the recorder. So they've played a song, they've sung a song about the rain with 3 notes in it, and then we get to recorder and they can play BAG. Perfect. Let's play that rain song you learnt when you were 5. Because also then what we're doing when we teach them to play that piece on the recorder is we're not trying to teach the musician and the technician, we've already got the musician, because they already know the song, they know how it goes, they understand it because they've played the games with it, they've done all those silly things with it, and they've learnt about how it follows a pitch that's falling, for example. Then when we get to the recorder, they already know that song, it's in their head. So we're not having to worry about the notation. I mean, obviously we want children to learn to read music. It's really important. But if we can detach some...
Is it, Sarah?
Absolutely fundamental. Why would you teach children... you wouldn't teach children about Shakespeare or about John Agar poems and say, oh, but you can't, don't worry, you can't read them. That's only for special people. So absolutely we have to teach children how to read music.
Because it's
about equity of access.
Because if you don't know it, then you feel like you can't access it.
And I'm not talking about reading music to a very high degree of skill. We're not expecting them to be scholars, but to be able to understand how music notation works. Yeah, absolutely. But if you go back to the recorder, okay, and we're practicing BAG, they've done lots of reading bits of music and all of that. Now we want to play a song they just know. Yeah, just for some fun. And it's just literally for the technical practice of getting their fingers in the right place. They already know that Wren song. Let's do that one because that's a quick win and they can play something they already know. I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? The number of times we give children instruments to learn and then ask them to play pieces they've never heard of. So if there's songs they've sung, which we can then use for instrumental practice. So I've got another Rain song. I like Rain songs. It's particularly topical at the moment, which has got a perfect fifth in it. So that's great for teaching on recorder B to E or A to D or top D to G. And you can just do it in different keys and they already know the song. They know how it goes. So we can just say, we're going to practice it on these two notes. And they're just practicing the technical skills of getting the fingers in the right place for that instrument. So I think having a set of songs that children know and then working out sort of sneaky ways to use them in their musicianship, and to start with it might be to be helping them to learn about music notation or about rhythm or about pitch or about musical structure, but it might become it might become a piece that they could play on an instrument they're mastering to help them with the technical aspect of it. So the idea of having repertoire for musical learning that starts from the beginning and goes through is one strand, and the idea of having a shared repertoire across the school for school life, for the beliefs of the school, for the sense of belonging in the school, for the sense that everyone knows it. You know, the dinner staff know the songs, the TAs know the songs, the head teacher knows the songs, the class teachers know the songs, the children know the songs, and that they're just there and the children sing them with gusto and enthusiasm. That sense of belonging is really important. So that's what I'm on about. And we've worked really hard at that in Brent, and we've got a team. So I manage a team called Music School, i.e. music '(S), cool, music school, not music school spelt without an H, as I discovered when I first joined. It's based on Kodayi principles to a large extent. So the musicianship training happens in a very sort of Kodayi way. We learn the minor third first, the so me, so me type songs first, and then we gradually add more repertoire that expands that pitch range. We introduce rhythm notation. We introduce rhythm. It's always sound before symbol. We introduce the idea of rhythm as patterns, how that sits on top of the beat. We bring in notation as the children grow. We're understanding about phrase. We're understanding about pitch matching. Singing is at the heart of everything. So my teachers, we have a set of core repertoire that we take into our schools. And that, for example, I might have one team who deliver the Key Stage 1 in one school, but a different person's delivering Key Stage 2. My Key Stage 2 teacher knows what they've done in Year 1 and Year 2 because we have this core repertoire, these songs that we carry through that we all own. So when it comes to musical learning, my team, we pretty much share our repertoire. When it comes to school life, singing assemblies, school songs, that sort of thing, it will be dependent school to school. And you look at the community of the school and the positivity and enthusiasm or otherwise of the senior leaders in terms of really embedding singing, and then that school will sort of own a set of songs, if you like, but that would be different from school to school because every school's different in terms of school life, but it does really work. And it certainly,
you talking about the hymns in class, you were referencing the 60s or 70s, but I had hymns in school as well, in primary school, in the 90s.
And did you go to a church school?
No. I went to like a primary school, and I didn't even have any viewpoint on God or religion or even the context of the songs, but I remember those tunes, and with friends now who are similar age talking about it from different schools, because I think we all had like, well, it was like
it's the BBC hymn book,
and you've got that shared experience across, which maybe is different from what we're doing or what you're doing here, right? Is that was a national thing. You talk about it now and you're like, oh yeah, if I had a hammer and whatever, and it's this,
and that's what this guy, primary school bangers guy, is running, and he is filling halls and concert halls for primary school bangers, and he sings all of these songs. If I Had a Hammer, Were You There, if you could, all the songs that it's crazy, but that is a sort of shared heritage we all have. Now, when we were at school, probably when you were at school, certainly when I was at school, your average primary school teacher in reception class could confidently expect most children in that class coming into the school from home would have probably 20 or so songs that everybody knew. Yeah, I was listening so when my mother died, we found a cassette from 1972, which was just down the back of a sideboard, and I sent it off to a recording engineer who put it onto MP3 for me, and it's my sister and I, my sister who you just met, singing songs, which we then sent to Gibraltar, where my aunt her husband was stationed there. We sent them because it was too expensive to make phone calls in those days. So we used to send cassettes of each other doing stuff for all the cousins. And it's me and my sister doing things. And we had songs like Peter Piper. We had, all sorts of rhymes, which children just don't know anymore. So when I go to a primary school,
folk songs, really.
Once the nursery rhymes. Do you
think it would be better, though, with these projects if it was national, bit British folk songs?
Yeah,
folk songs,
absolutely.
Or,
I think the reason that we don't have that 20 sets of songs nowadays is partly because we have a much more international landscape. Certainly in Brent, we have an incredibly diverse landscape of children. So we've got lots of different communities.
But would that be wrong, though, then, for that diverse community to sing British folk songs?
Oh, gosh, no, it's not wrong. No, I just think we just need to bear in mind they won't know them. They won't be coming into school already knowing them.
I reckon no kids know it.
No, so I reckon there's 3 songs that everybody knows now when they come to school, and see if you can guess what they are.
Well, from Wriggle and Rhyme, which is like I think things like Sleeping Little Bunnies.
Maybe Sleepy Bunnies, yeah, but maybe not everyone.
Okay. What's the Horsey?
Yeah. I don't think they know that one, no. Not everyone, no.
That's a classic.
Okay. I would say Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I would say Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
And maybe Wheels on the Bus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those are the 3 that I can be pretty confident the kids will know when they come to school. But others will be very, very different. Now, what we've got a population of kids who are coming from a much more diverse background, but we've also got grandparents not living really close to their grandchildren anymore, and grandchildren
not singing it to their kids.
So historically, grandparents have had a massive role in oral tradition of singing. And so we've lost that to some extent because children aren't cared for habitually by grandparents as much as they used to be. Obviously, I'm generalising. But, so that's a big impact. So what I want to do is effectively plant a set of songs in school that the children grow and learn when they're little. And yes, there'll be English folk songs, absolutely. But there might also be some songs from... If you, when I worked in Hackney, we had a huge Turkish population. This is a long time ago now. I don't know whether Hackney is still the same. So I made it my business to go. I went to the kebab shop where one of my girls I taught's dad was the owner there. And he, in the kebab shop, sang me a load of songs, and I learned some frog songs and this, that and the other from Turkey to bring into the school and to use as part of our culture in that school. Now that's not going to be appropriate in every school. Some schools there might be strong Irish community heritage in some of our schools in Brent, or and South Asian as well, big South Asian population. So find those songs, include them, not exclusively. Definitely need to have all those English folk songs as well, but I have quite an international repertoire. So I've got a song this afternoon that I'm going to share from Spain. I've got another one from West Africa. I've got another one which is sort of American, white American, possibly. It's difficult to know. Bluesy, maybe a bit bluesy. I've got 2 more songs which are very strongly, I think, with very strong British heritage. So those songs form a landscape which I know that I can play games with the children when they're very little with them, learn about the musical elements of them as they grow up, use them as pieces for developing technical skills on instruments. So it's just a nice little pathway, really.
Yeah. I'm really fascinated by all that. And maybe we need to do an actual full podcast episode, but that, the oral tradition of passing songs to kids. In my situation, my wife is very much attached to folk songs and shared all that, but I've noticed from other parents that we were going through being parents with that wasn't there, and they got it from like Wriggle and Rhyme from libraries, and you see like that sort of passing down of songs is just totally different unless you have an interest like you or I who are musicians. Then why would you know it really unless a grandparent really passed it to you in the first place?
And I think knowing all the words is sometimes quite tricky. I mean, my father, he's not alive anymore, bless him, but he was an uncle for 40 years before he was. No, not 40 years, but as an adult, he was an uncle until he was 40. I was born just before he was 40, and Katie and I, my twin sister, we're his first and last, as it were. And so all his nephews and nieces, they would still refer to my dad as Uncle Bum Bum, because he would put them on his knee and start singing a song and forget the words, and off he'd go, ba 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 bum ba bum ba bum ba bum 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 bum. And actually, that doesn't matter. The idea that you're just having that communication, because music is this wonderful form of communication for small children, and just communicating and enjoying and loving that musicking is wonderful. It also gives you that sense of belonging, So, I mean, his mother used to sing a song to my sister, Katie, I'll see you at the kitchen door. And I basically harassed her until she'd made up a version with my name in, because I wanted to feel like I belonged, I think.
Interesting, yeah.
And I think there's that sense of belonging. And if, as a school, we can build something that is shared, that creates a sense of belonging, that's so important for school.
So that individual school communities rather than a national community.
I don't think it would matter, but I think it would be very difficult to create something like the BBC Songbook again and know that would just work. I mean, BBC are doing amazing things. I don't know if you've seen their Get Singing thing that's going on at the moment.
Yeah, I've seen the Jacob Collier thing.
Yeah,
and all that.
And all the training videos there are created by Shivani Ratan, who's our choral coordinator for Brent Music. She runs our senior choir as well. They're doing amazing things, but it's so squeezed now. Not everyone's going to have the time or the resources to go out and do that and then have the confidence to actually deliver it. So for me, what I'm doing in Brent, I do the very best I can, and I come at it from a lot of experience. When I was a freelance musician for many years, and I worked in one day here and one day there, and I invested entirely in my own CPD all the way through. No one ever paid for that. And so I studied with British Kadai Academy, who I'm still a member of that association. Amazing. I've studied and I've belonged to the Music Teachers Association. I've worked with Sing for Pleasure. I've invested in my own professional development to get to where I am, and I've lost my thread now of where we got to on that.
Right. We can edit it.
Yeah, we can edit that one. Don't print that. Don't publish that. But I've brought all of that skill to what I do in Brent. But it would be really nice. I think everyone is so squeezed. People need to sort of work out what they can do for themselves. But having a sense of solidarity, and it might be that you just you sign up to Sparkyard and you use all those assembly songs, but you'll find as you go along that some schools will have favourites. So I bumped into a teacher in the first school I ever worked at was in Hackney, in South Hackney, and it was a really poor area. It's not now. It's very, very shishy now. It's sort of London Fields area, and I was the music teacher there. And she was the nursery teacher, and we job shared a bit. I taught some nursery there as well. And I went to the English National Opera, to the opera last week, and I just posted on Facebook because I had a spare ticket. And she replied saying, "You've inspired me. I'm going to come." I've not seen her for 30 years. And we stood up. I met her in the balcony in the interval. She said, "Every time I think of you, Sarah. No, every time it rains, I think of you, Sarah." I said, "Why?" And she said, "Antonio." And it's this song that I'd done in that school. On Monday morning he got up. It's raining again. See, I love rain songs. And and the chorus goes, "Antonio, Antonio, it's rain." I can't remember. It's one of the A&C Black books. And she said, "You always did it. You always did it." I'd forgotten about it. But that had become a core song in our school without me thinking and naming it as such, of one that we just all knew and we just all did. And it just something the school owned. And we always did a song called Jean Harlow as well, which was weird in primary school. Jean Harlow died the other day. These are the very last words I heard her say.
Right.
I mean, but the kids loved it.
Right.
I've never done that in a different school. But that was a song we would always come back to.
It just sort of captures.
They just loved it.
imagination.
And it was around and they had great fun with it. And they owned it.
I suppose it's almost like when a pop song becomes taken on by the public because it's nowhere, but it's in the little microcosm
Baby
of
Shark,
the school.
you know.
Yeah. But it just goes around the playground, basically.
Absolutely. And I think that sense of when kids, I know a song you know, I belong. And when you've got kids coming into these schools who are feeling quite lost and maybe don't, when they start to engage in those songs and feel part of that community and they know those songs, then they feel like they belong. And I think that's really important. So that's what we're aiming for with this shared repertoire, just getting schools singing and creating a community around it that builds belonging and builds learning.
It's amazing. It's great. It's perfect.
In this clip, I chat with Emily Crowhurst, head of 4 to 18 Music and Performing Arts at School 21.
If I could draw from the presentation that
Lovely.
I did this morning with my colleague Michelle. So it was about thinking about how to design and redraft a rich, authentic and purposeful music curriculum.
Okay.
And thinking about the idea of designing a curriculum as not just about, and even, well, I suppose not focusing solely on what content you're delivering and what genres you're focusing on, but actually digging into some more questions around the why of your curriculum, the values of your curriculum, the processes that you follow to kind of really think about what actually is happening in your curriculum and how it's responding to the community, and how you're creating something that has an authenticity to it and has a purpose that students can feel accountable to. So the curriculum that we have developed at School 21 comes from a values-based curriculum, and it centres from 5 core practices, and that's our starting point for designing our curriculum.
Okay. And what are they?
So they are ensemble, mastery, creativity, community, and flow. Nice. And each of those 5 words have sort of a simplistic definition, but also something that's got quite a lot of depth and quite layered in a musical context. And we have sort of taglines with each of those words, and we use those to kind of not only design sort of we use those to pin our curriculum onto. So there are tools for sort of planning what goes into the curriculum. There also are our sort of tools for developing our assessment criteria. They're also what we formulate our shared language for our curriculum around. So we've got mechanical, social and emotional knowledge words that link to each of those values, and we use those with the students to help them to talk and think like musicians. So it kind of gives us a whole network of kind of richness that is there before we even started sort of thinking about, you know, whether it's the blues or whether it's this particular type of music.
So the starting point is a deeper thinking and then you latch on those musical ideas like genres onto that. Can we talk about what I find most interesting and exciting out of those words was the word flow. So use that, your definition of that as well, you know, that kind of...
So the reason we have flow in there, and the reason I think it's important, is because all musicians know that feeling of kind of really being in the moment in a musical performance, that moment where time sort of feels like it's limitless, and you have a completely kind of unconscious competence around what you're doing, and you're able to
I think I have unconscious incompetence sometimes.
That's the start of that. You've got unconscious incompetence, then conscious incompetence, then conscious competence, then unconscious competence. So there's sort of, it's kind of a little ladder there. But you know, when you reach that point where you're making music and you're in that moment, and that's something that we want our students to experience in the classroom and in any performance. But it's such a difficult thing to make tangible and for students to understand actually what that actually is and feels like. So the word flow helps us to try to create a bit of a language base around it.
Actually articulate.
So we refer to it as things like locking in, getting into the groove, sort of things like that. And we talk about the feeling of flow, and also the barriers that prevent you from getting to a state of flow. So it could be that, you know, you're feeling unmotivated, or you're not stretched, or you're unclear on the task, you're distracted by something. So it's giving our students sort of a bit of a tool to kind of like actually explore how they're being in the room and how they're being when they're playing music. So we can then help them to, so if we can eliminate this barrier, we can help you get to a point of flow and a point of getting really into the music.
Then when it comes to language and articulating some of those more abstract musical things, like you were talking about flow, and I think you were talking about emotional, what was the term?
So within each core practice we've got a language that divides into mechanical, social and emotional.
Mechanical, social.
Yeah, so if I was to take the example of ensemble, mechanical things would be things like timing, internalizing, breathing, moving, counting, balancing. Mechanical things that musicians do when they're performing effectively as part of an ensemble. So they're doing all of those mechanical things. The social things would be things you're doing that show your awareness of others. So watching, listening, cueing, gesturing, blending. And then the emotional side of things is the one that's quite hard to to kind of make tangible in music, because it's such a sort of internalized thing that musicians do, but the kind of the communication, the expression, like the showing of emotion, enjoyment, awareness. So,
and actually just being into it.
Yeah, so you can kind of see, if you divide ensemble musicianship into those three categories, you can see how they can be explored on different levels and at different stages. So an A-level musician or a GC musician where you're being, assessed on your interpretation skills, that's kind of quite a core part of the criteria. So that's all about kind of your emotional knowing and your emotional understanding when you're performing in an ensemble. And I think this language gives them something to kind of pin that on and hang it on and to think about, rather than just feel it, just express yourself. So it's a way of being able to talk about it.
Articulate.
But then also link it to the mechanics that enable that.
But I was interested that you used internalize in mechanics.
I think I mean there in terms of kind of like internalizing rhythms. In counting, so I think of that as sort of quite mechanical.
Interesting. Okay.
But I see what you mean. But I suppose, they're not perfect categories, and they do sort of interlock. But that's also part of the complexity of it. But it's an attempt. I suppose it's an attempt to try to kind of offer a sort of an in-depth look at all the things that are going on in a musician's brain via these lenses. And that's quite interesting to unpack. And the language base gives you something that, I can dip into these three words today, maybe with year 9, because actually these are the things that are getting in our way. Like, no one's watching each other. So let's draw upon that, and then let's create some oracy around that to discuss it, because our school is a big oracy school, and so talking in the classroom is a big thing, not just kind of allowing students to talk, but actually talking very deliberately. And we have lots of protocols and processes for helping students to talk in a meaningful way, and that helps them talk like musicians as well. So we give them the musical language, and we blend those with the oracy protocols that we use at school.
And what are those protocols? They're less than obviously like huge.
There's a lot of facets to like an oracy task. But for example, firstly, you might decide whether it's some form of paired talk or trio talk. That talk might be about exploring some talking points, or it might be exploring an opinion line about things. So sometimes we might get students to rank themselves in terms of their skills in watching or skills in listening, etc. And then they will have some guided questions to have a discussion about that with their partner or a trio, for example. And then an outcome of that might be then for them to set, a target for themselves, or to just understand themselves a little bit better in that context, and to understand what it is that they need to then do to sort of develop that when they go and rehearse independently.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you.